Bright Tuty. Every student matters.
Hi guys, welcome back to the lesson. So today we are going to look at chapter 11 of your geography book, and this chapter is called Continents and Oceans. Now if you remember, in the last class we did very briefly on continents and oceans, but this class we are going to deal with both continents and oceans in detail, in great detail. Okay, so we'll talk about all the continents, its physical features, but we'll also talk about in a similar manner about oceans, all the oceans and its features. All right. So let us begin. Now, when we look at Earth, the planet Earth, that planet Earth is divided into two main divisions. Okay, there are two main divisions, and that divisions is, those divisions are, number one, continents, and number two is the oceans. Okay, so continents basically comprise of the landmass, and oceans comprise of the water bodies. Alright, so land and water both come together to form the earth. Alright, so let's look at these two divisions in detail. So in the topic 1, we'll look at continents, and in the following topic, we'll look at the oceans. Alright. Now, what are continents? We know continents refer to the landmass. So, continents are those landmass which are continuous. Okay. So, it's not a small piece of land. It's a great area of land. Okay. Which flows through the surface, which covers the surface of the earth to large extent. Okay. So, continuous piece of landmass is called continents. Alright. Now, these continents that are present on Earth's surface, they are separated from another continents or one another by oceans. So, basically, the continents are placed in such a manner that in between there are oceans, and those oceans separate one continent from the other. Okay. Now, in Earth, in our planet Earth, there are 7 continents. Okay. So, these 7 continents make the land mass of the earth. So, the first continent that we are going to look at is Asia. So, the continent where we live in India, okay, India falls in the continent of Asia. Okay, so we are in the continent of Asia. So this is the continent that we are first going to discuss. Now, Asia is the largest of all the 7 continents. Out of all the 7 continents in the world, Asia is the largest amongst them. It covers 1/3 of the total land area of the earth. So 1/3 out of 3. So if we divide the total area, land area, which is on earth, then one part of it is covered by the continent of Asia. So the continent of Asia is that large. Okay. Now here in Asia, 58% of the world's population live. 58% is a little more than half of the world's population. So many people live in the largest continent of all the continents in the world. Okay. The Asian continent, the continent of Asia, it is situated in the eastern hemisphere. So the planet Earth is divided into 2 by equator, in northern hemisphere, southern hemisphere. Again, it is divided into eastern hemisphere and western hemisphere. Okay. So when we say Asia is located in eastern hemisphere, that means it is in this part of the planet Earth. Okay. Now, Tropic of Cancer passes through it. So there are different lines which divides and encircles Earth. So equator, Tropic of Cancer, Tropic of Capricorn, right? So those lines are important. Alright. Now, Tropic of Cancer passes through the continent of Asia. The continent extends from 10 degrees south to 80 degrees north latitudes and from 25 degrees east to 170 degree east longitudes. Okay, this is just to locate. This is the location. This tells us about the location of Asia, continent of Asia. Okay. Now, in Asia, the population, the people who live in the continent of Asia, they tend to crowd the river valleys. The river valleys which are in this continent, few of them are so crowded. Most of the people are concentrated in those river valleys. Okay. Now, of all the population, total population of Asia, 3/4 of them, okay, 3/4, that means more than half of them depend on agriculture. That means most of the people engage themselves in agricultural activities. Okay. And in the continent of Asia, the farmers and the people who engage themselves in agricultural practices, they grow crops such as rice, millets, jute, raw silk, rubber, tea, sugarcane, spices, oil seeds, and coconut. Okay. Now, this continent, the continent of Asia, is also very rich in mineral deposits. There are a lot of different kinds of minerals that can be found in this continent. Let's see what they are. They are tin, mica, mineral oil, coal, iron ore, bauxite, and manganese. These are some of the minerals that are found in Asia. Asia, or the continent of Asia, is one of the leading manufacturers or leading producers of cotton, jute, and silk textiles, the cloth, the fabric. Okay. So, Asia as a continent is one of the leading continents in the world who manufacture and produce cotton, jute, and silk textiles. Okay. Now, Asia also has very old history. It has had very old history. Okay. Here, all the leading religions like Buddhism, Hinduism, Islam, okay, they have originated. Okay. So, Asia was the continent from where most of the leading religions originated. Okay. Because of the fact that how these religions started from Asia, how Asia has had very old history of people living in this area. Because of that, Asia as a continent is also called or known as the cradle of human civilization. This is the place from where the human civilization began. Okay. Now, India, the country of India, belongs to the southern part of Asia. So, the southern part of Asia is known as South Asia. Okay, so India belongs to that portion of Asia in South Asia. So that portion is called South Asia. Now, India alone is not the only country which belongs to this portion. So there are India's neighbors and other countries as well who also belong to South Asia. Okay, these countries are China, Pakistan, Nepal, Bhutan, Bangladesh, Myanmar, and Sri Lanka. Okay. Now, Malaysia and Indonesia are two countries which are located in the southeastern part of Asia. Okay, so they are called Southeast Asian countries. Now, these two countries are very popular for plantation agriculture, plantation of coffee, plantation of tea, plantation of other crops. Okay, in east of Asia, we have Japan. Okay, in eastern part, we have Japan, one of the most developed, prosperous and modern countries in the continent of Asia. Okay. China also is located in the eastern part of Asia. Now, when we come to the west, we find countries such as Iran, Saudi Arabia, Iraq, and Turkey. These are the countries which are located in the western part of the continent of Asia. Now, these countries located in the west, they are very rich in petroleum and gas deposits. Okay, so here we have a political map of Asia. So you can see India, China, Southeast Asia that we just talked about, right? Malaysia, Thailand, Indonesia. We also have countries in the west, Iran, Saudi Arabia, Turkey, etc. As you can see. In the eastern side, we can also see Japan here, and then China, right? So this gives a clear picture of the continent of Asia. You can see how the continent covers at least or almost half of the area, half of the total area on Earth's surface. Okay. Now, let us look at some of the physical features of the continent of Asia. So, there are 5 main physical features of Asia. They are northern lowlands, and we'll look at each of them as we discuss one by one. Okay, so first physical feature is the northern lowlands. Let's look at what this feature is. So in the northern part of the continent, there's a vast lowland. Okay, they are not elevated, they're not high, they're low. Now this lowland is called Siberian Plain. Okay, this extends from Bering Strait to the Caspian Sea, and it lies between the Arctic Ocean and Central Highlands. Alright, here there are rivers such as Ob, Yenisei and Lena. Okay, they flow from south to north. Okay, from south to north, and as they flow from south to the north, they flow towards Arctic Ocean, and that's where they drain into. Finally, they drain into the Arctic Ocean. Okay. The next feature is the Central Mountain Belt. So we looked at the lowlands. Now we'll look at the plains. Now the Central Mountain Belt, this is located in the southern part of the northern lowlands, the Siberian Plain. Now here we find both mountains and plateaus. Okay. And some of them are Pamir Plateau in Central Asia. Now, Pamir Plateau in Central Asia, this forms a mountainous knot from which several mountain chains run out in different directions. So, Pamir Plateau is one of the plateaus or one of the mountains which fall in the Central Mountain Belt. But Pamir Plateau is formed in a mountainous knots. There are so many mountains which are knotted or connected with this plateau. And as a result of that, many mountains run out in various directions. So say, for example, if this is Pamir Plateau, right, there are a lot of mountains, okay, and they form chain-like structures, and so many of them, they just form ranges which run out of it. Okay, now these mountains which run out of the Pamir Plateau, they enclose huge plateaus and desert basins. Okay, so as these mountains run out of Pamir Plateau in ranges, they bound huge plateaus and also desert basins. Okay. Now, 2 mountain chains from Pamir Plateau run westward and enclose the plateaus of Iran and Anatolia. The mountain chains of the Himalayas, the Karakoram and the Kunlun, they run towards the east. So, some of them run towards the west, while others run towards the east. Okay. The plateau of Tibet or the Tibetan plateau is enclosed by the chain of mountain range which is called the Himalayas and the Kunlun. And the Tibetan plateau, or the plateau of Tibet, is the largest and highest plateau of the world. Because of it being the largest and the highest plateau of the world, it is also known popularly as the roof of the world. Okay. The third physical feature, the southern plateaus. Alright. From the mountain, we'll look at the southern plateaus. Now, to the south of the central mountain belt lies the plateaus. Now, these plateaus are made up of rocks, old rocks, okay, rocks which are very old. Now, some of the plateaus which are found in this area are Plateau of Arabia, the Deccan Plateau in India, the Plateau of Shan and Yunnan, okay. The fourth physical feature is the great river valleys, okay. Now, many great rivers or large rivers, they emerge from the mountainous belt, from the plateaus that we just talked about, okay. They originate from these plateaus and mountains and flow through the mountains into the ocean or into the plains, okay. As they flow out of the mountains into the ocean, into the plains, then they form big fertile valleys, okay. They form valleys which are big as well as fertile. Some of the important rivers are important river valleys are Tigris Euphrates, the Indus Valley, the Ganga Brahmaputra Valley, the Irrawaddy Valley, the Mekong Valley, the Siklang, the Changjiang, and the Huangho River Valley. Okay. Now, these river valleys are some of the world's most populated areas. Most of the people are concentrated in these river valleys because they are very fertile, okay. And because of this reason, some of the world's most populated areas fall in some of these river valleys. The fifth and the last physical feature is the island groups, the islands, okay. Now, the island groups falling or belonging to the continent of Asia are Indonesia, Philippines, Japan, okay. Now, most of these island groups are mountainous. They are not flat. They are mountainous, okay. And some of them are very well known for the volcanoes that are located in these island groups and also that erupt in this mountain groups, okay. So they are very popular and they are commonly known for the volcanoes, okay. So this is the physical map of the continent of Asia, and you can see how the Ural mountain it bounds or it separates Asia from Europe, okay. So you see the plateau of Tibet, right? You see the central plateau. So if you look very carefully in your book here, because of how I have presented the map, it's not very clear, but if you look into your book, then you can see very clearly and locate some of the important physical features that we just learned. Now, the next continent that we are going to look is that of Africa. Now, Africa is the second largest continent among the 7 continents in the world. Okay, so Africa is second from Asia. Okay, it occupies about 20% of the total land on Earth's surface. Okay, the population of Africa is 3/5 of India. So its population is not very much. The area that the continent of Africa covers is very large. So if you think about it, if the area is very large, then that area will also be having lot of people. It'll be well populated, but the population is not that much. Okay, the total population of Africa is only 3/5 of that in India. So 3/5 of what is in India is found in Africa. Okay, equator passes from the middle of the continent of Africa. Okay, now large part of the continent, most of the area of the continent of Africa falls to the north of equator. Okay, so equator divides the continent into two, and the major chunk of the continent falls in the northern part of equator. Okay, Tropic of Cancer and Tropic of Capricorn also passes through the continent of Africa. The continent is situated between 37 degrees 14 inch north to 35 degrees 50 inch south latitudes and 20 degree west to 52 degree east longitudes. Okay, the prime meridian, which divides the Earth into two, eastern hemisphere and western hemisphere, just like how equator divides the Earth into two halves, northern hemisphere and southern hemisphere. So the prime meridian, it passes through Africa near Accra, which is the capital of Ghana. Okay, Africa is also called or also known as the continents of plateaus because there are so many plateaus in the continent of Africa. Africa has thick forests, extensive grasslands and vast deserts. Okay, it is very rich in resources like forests, wildlife, minerals and power. So it has a very rich mineral deposit or rich natural mineral deposits as well. The continent of Africa also grows a lot of varieties of crops. Some of them are millet, wheat, cassava, cotton, groundnut, cocoa, fruits and some spices such as clove. Okay, so here is the map of Africa. So you can see how Tropic of Capricorn passes through it, equator passes through it, and Tropic of Cancer also passes through it. Alright, now let us look at physical features of Africa. So Africa has mountains, plateaus, desert, rift valleys and rivers. Now let's look at them one by one. Okay, so first we'll look at the mountains and the plateaus. Now Africa has several number of plateaus. Okay, Africa itself is like one huge plateau. Okay, but it has several plateaus, smaller plateaus. These plateaus are higher in the south and east. So in the south and east, the plateaus are higher. Okay, there are also few volcanic mountains or volcanic mountain peaks in the eastern part of the continent near the equator. Okay, and the highest peak of Africa is Mount Kilimanjaro. Okay, Mount Kilimanjaro is 5,895 meters and it is covered with snow throughout the year. Alright, Atlas Mountains are other mountains present in or located in Africa, and this is located or extended from the northwestern part of Africa to Morocco and Algeria. Okay, so from the northwestern part of Africa, it extends further to Morocco and Algeria. Other mountains are Drakensberg Mountain. Now this mountain is located in the southeastern part of the continent of Africa. Okay, apart from these mountains, Africa also has Ethiopian highlands. Now these highlands, they extend on both sides of the equator, in the eastern side, okay, with a number of volcanic mountains or peaks located in that highlands. Alright, the lowland areas are also present in the continent of Africa, and they are located in the western and northern parts of the continent as well as along the coastal areas. Okay, The second physical feature is the desert. Okay. Now 1/3 of Africa, 1/3 of the continent of Africa is basically desert. Okay. Sahara, which is located in Africa, is the largest desert in the world. Alright, and it is located in the northern part of the African continent or the continent of Africa. There is also, apart from Sahara Desert, Kalahari Desert. This is located in the southern part of Africa. And there is also Namib Desert, apart from Kalahari Desert, and this is located in the west coast of Namibia. Alright. So the third feature is rift valleys. Now rift valleys are one of the most special physical feature of the continent, a physical feature of Africa or the continent of Africa. So Africa has rift valleys which are called the Great Rift Valley. Okay. Now these are valleys which are very long and deep. They are long, they run for a long time, okay? They're quite long and they are deep and they are formed as a result of cracks or rifts in the land, okay? So if there's a piece of land and there are cracks or there are just rifts, alright? So these are the rift valleys that are formed, and these rift valleys, they continue to stretch for a long time. They continue to stretch, yes, and cover long distances, alright. Now these valleys have steep slopes on both sides. So the slopes on both sides are very steep, okay. So the long chain of rift valleys, how I said that these rift valleys in Africa, they stretch for a long distance. So they run from south of Lake Malawi in Africa towards the Red Sea, okay. So it looks as if it's a long chain of rift valley, okay. So that is called the Great Rift Valley because it's a very long and deep series of rift valleys that run from south of Lake Malawi towards the Red Sea, and from there it again continues to run through the Gulf of Suez and Gulf of Aqaba to the Dead Sea. Okay, so it stretches for long distances. Okay. The fourth physical feature is the lakes and the rivers. Okay. Africa has several lakes. All right. In the highland regions of Africa, there are several lakes, alright. Lake Victoria is the largest lake that exists in Africa. The source of river Nile is the Lake Victoria, okay. So River Nile, a very important river for the continent of Africa, that river originates from Lake Victoria. River Nile is the longest river in the world, okay. Other rivers are in African continent, River Zaire, which is in the Central Africa, River Niger, which is in the western part of the continent, and then Zambezi and Orange are important rivers of the southern part of the continent, okay. Now, except rivers such as Nile and Zaire, few rivers in the continent of Africa are used for shipping, for navigation, okay, because the rivers here in Africa, they drop from higher altitude plateaus into the coastal lowlands, making waterfalls. So if there are too many waterfalls, how can you use those rivers for traveling long distances or in the boat or ship, right? Because then you reach the waterfall and you fall off the waterfall, right? So it is not good for it is not wise to use the waterfalls or such rivers for navigation purpose. Alright, this is why very few African rivers are used for shipping.